PodcastCoug Season 6, Episode 4.
You are listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we're all things Cougar football, 30 minutes of Coug talk, and we're talking about our tragic outcome and the lost USC in our upcoming game against the Utes in Utah, Salt Lake on Saturday. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Episode 4, Season 6. Okay, it was USC 45, Washington State 14. Wow, what a tragic loss. You know, during that 45-14 loss, Trojans had 45 unanswered points. Everybody knows that. That was hard to sit through. That first half was great, and it was great being there and running into Brock Hewitt at the Coug. Actually had kind of a 45-minute, or no, it's about 40 minutes with Brock sitting at my table at the Coug, which is great. Friday afternoon around 4 o'clock. It was just getting to the point where it was getting crazy. And so we actually got a table, and great hooking up with Brock. Really, such a great guy. He did the color. We both thought the outcome would be Cougs, with Kevin Slovish never played a game in the rain before. And as it turned out, the third or fourth play of the game, he got injured, and here we go. And then, of course, now Delora was injured, some sort of knee injury, right, in the second half, right before halftime. Just changed the entire game, second half, right? So we saw him coming out after the half with a brace on his left knee, and he was limping along. Literally, Delora did fairly good in the first half. Actually, the best we've ever seen Delora over that Oregon State game from last year, and just really moved the ball. And he accounted for 192 of the team's 279 total yards of the day. And that was all first half, 10 of 16, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I thought he was playing his best ever that we've ever seen Delora play against USC. And just crazy. He gets injured right with seconds left at the half. And of course, USC's guy's out, Slovish is out, and just what a crazy game. Cougs had the ball on their own 35-yard line, 32 seconds on the clock. Delora dodged a pass rusher, scrambled out, collapsing, basically scrambled out of a collapsing pocket and up on the middle on another defender that came in late and just landing on Delora's back. 25 seconds left on the clock, then it was halftime. And nobody really knew what was going on. It's like, what's going on? And I guess the team doctor and trainers looked at it, and they just made an analysis. They couldn't get a complete analysis on Delora's condition, on Jaden's condition, when the half started. So basically, they played it safe, and he was just out. He wanted to come in. He wanted to come back and play. Apparently, but they just held him out for the second half of the game. And we know all the rest is history. Victor Gabalis now comes in, a sophomore walk-on, and just absolutely died. I mean, last time we had a great walk-on at Washington State, it was Luke Falk. But I'll tell you, Victor had a bad first outing. As a walk. Why would you put on a walk? Where's Cam Cooper, right? What happened to Cam Cooper? Gabalis didn't even gain a single yard in the third quarter, while USC rolled up, 28 points in the third quarter. And then just, very sad. Everything changed when Delora was out. And that is very sad. We're not very deep in quarterback. You would think what Leach gave us, there would be a lot of meat on the bone. Apparently, there's not. It's been a lot of surprises with our backups. So in the 6 games of Rolovich's, actually 6 of 7 games with Rolo, the Cougs have managed to really go out to a double-digit lead and really winning two out of those all those games. We beat Oregon State, and then in last year's opener, and then Portland State, and that's it out of the 7. So, we've squandered 4 double-digit leads, all within the second half breakdowns and meltdowns, all in both seasons with our new coach. Okay, that is 4 double-digit leads, all in the second half, just meltdowns, breakdowns in both seasons. So we're seeing a little bit of a pattern here, and we essentially watched 4 out of 7 games to be, just collapsed, in the past 2 seasons. And not that we battled and lost, we just outright collapsed in all phases, just completely collapsed, and which is unheard of. And what's really interesting is there's no second half adjustments. Think about it. Who is the master of all Washington State coaches? Who really did really well at making second half adjustments? Now, this is kind of a tough one. We have to go back a little bit. It's Dennis Erickson. Leach was known for really an offensive. I mean, he just didn't make those adjustments, especially for Apple Cup. But Mike Price was pretty good, but Dennis Erickson was probably the best we had at second half adjustments. No adjustments on the second half, absolutely zero, nothing. In 7 games, no second half adjustments. And, financially, on computer, we just cannot afford the buyout, unless somebody's going to electronically write a check to let our coach go. Because unfortunately, if you really look at the numbers, I mean, in every sort of platform there is, and rightfully so, there are people chiming in, whether they're criticizing or not criticizing, and they're asking Pat Chun to make a decision, not only to make a decision, to just let him go. Well, if you really look at the numbers in the contract, it's very, very financially painful to do that. Somebody is going to have to electronically write a check or physically. We'll take a physical check, right? A paper check, just to pick up the expense because the athletic department doesn't have the means for the buyout. There's just no way. Speaking about buyouts, all right, so, you've got to be thinking about recruiting. You've got to be thinking about, do we have the right team on the right bus? And why wait? Okay, if you're not going in the right direction. And granted, it's been 2 seasons and not even a full 2 seasons. But when there's no second half adjustments whatsoever, when you're bringing in backup quarterbacks as walk-ups who've never played ever in this level, ever, and when you've got one of the best running backs in the Pac-12 that's averaging between 7 to 10, maybe 13 catches a game at the most, when it really should be 20 or 25 touches a game. What about Dion Mcintosh? He's very good too. We've got to get Borgie and McIntosh at least 20 touches a game. In the podcast, we've been talking about this for 3 weeks now. When you fail to give our explosive running back, it's just a waste of his talent. I mean, I feel sorry for Max heading into the NFL, and when you're wasting that sort of talent, when you're starting a walk-on quarterback who's literally never thrown a ball at this level ever, and you've got other backup quarterbacks that may or may not be able to cut it, no second half adjustments, and crazy, what are you thinking of coaching? Some of the decisions that have been made, there's just been so much discussion about a replacement, and it's not if, it's when. You either know it or you don't. You either have it or you don't. And at this level, I'm sure this coach would be fine in the Mountain West, especially where he came from. Big Sky, Mountain West, but not at this level. If we're going to win some games, if we're going to recruit some players, if we're going to be explosive, if we're going to do everything, both sides of the ball, flying around, making plays, making sacks, I mean, there's got to be a change, right? And it's not if, it's when. And so let's talk about that. Who would you pick? Now, you're sitting there in your pajamas that you don't own or wear. Okay, you're on Wi-Fi. You're listening to a podcast, and maybe you're not a coach. Maybe you are a coach. Who would you pick, right? I've got a few guys here. First, I would say Hugh Freeze should be looked at. Now, Hugh is over at Liberty in Lynchburg, Liberty High School. It's a Division 1A, right? Best coach on a short list. He's taken Liberty to some amazing, the last 2 seasons, Liberty's got bowl games and beat out some really good opponents. And so definitely a really good coach. And Hugh Freeze needs to be taken a look at Liberty. Ryan Silverfield. This is a Memphis head coach, and he's this guy is really good too. So something to, he went Silverfield, that's Ryan Silverfield, Memphis, went 8-3 last year. And he beat also Mike Leach's team, right? Mississippi State. So overall, he is 11-4. So he's doing great. Another guy, Jamie Chadwell out of Coastal Carolina. He's a head coach there, and he's an up-and-comer. And now he may be waiting for a big SEC job to open up, or something like USC. But he went 11-1 last year, 3-0 this year so far. Runs a great system, good candidate. Would be a very good fit in Pullman. Overall, his record is 82-52. And again, that name is Jamie Chadwell. Jamie Chadwell out of Coastal Carolina. Jim McElwain out of Central Michigan, head coach. Now, he used to work for Nick Saban as the OC, coached at Colorado State, the Rams, and in Florida. And he's got a good offensive mind and has won everything, just wasn't good enough for Florida, but he's been a great coach, would be a great at this level. His overall record, 55-36. And then there is Bill O'Brien, the Alabama's offensive coordinator, probably waiting for the USC job, but he would make an excellent coach. That's Bill O'Brien. These are just a few guys' names out there. Of course, the university always has to spend a lot of money and hire a consultant and pay a lot of money in fees. But, it's not if, it's when. And you either have it or you don't at this level. And it's clearly, there's just been so many, it's just very, very obvious. And you're going to wait it out a couple of years and see what happens. Well, that's going to really, really affect recruiting. That's going to affect the donations, right? There are so many people just jumping off the bandwagon. Whether that's good or bad. If you're a hardcore Coug, maybe you're going to take it in. Maybe you're going to go to basketball, right? Go to. How about the Cougs lady volleyball? The Cougs volleyball are doing great right now. They've won 7 in a row. Basketball, Kyle Smith is doing great. We got great talent. And baseball, we're doing well. And there's just a lot of good. There's a lot of good teams at Washington State, but. Do we really want to sacrifice the next 2 or 3 years and enter a Paul Wolf era? I don't think anybody really wants to. And if I were to, we're all human. I just want to add that, we are all human and everybody makes a mistake, right? I mean, the moment you and I walked into church, the church is not perfect. Okay. So there's nobody that's perfect. That said, Pat Chun has made a mistake. It's just clearly he made a mistake. And he didn't see it. He didn't know it. He was thinking, hey, we got a run and shoot guy. This is, he's kind of replacing the air raid. Instead of the air raid, we're going to go run and shoot. I can see where he was thinking, and he thought that he did his due diligence, but he clearly made a mistake. if I want to add to this, if I was Pat Chun, there's something else I would do. And this is a little bit of off topic, but I just got to throw it out there. There's absolutely no excuse to not have a bronze statue of Bob Robertson at Martin Stadium. There's just, it should have been done. Okay. It's been a year since Bob Rob has passed away. The legendary, one of the greatest college football play-by-play announcers in the United States, and the biggest Coug of all time, Bob Robertson. There needs to be a bronze statue. If I have to single-handedly start a campaign and we're donating and get people to donate, I mean, what's a bronze statue going to cost? Let's just say $50,000 or $40,000, $30,000 or $20,000. There's right, but this has to be raised, and this has to be done, and this has to be put in somewhere around Martin Stadium. Of course, Bob played. He called basketball for many years, but for the Cougs. But this needs to be done, and those two things need to be done. So Pat Chun has got two things on his list, and that is obviously it has to happen. And I know one of them will. Let's just hope Bob Robertson happens as well. Hey, we're going to talk about the Utes, University of Utah, next, right here, coming up on the second half of the Podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
The real estate agent you work with matters, and a great agent helps you own the home of your dreams. And your dreams come true with James Laurie at Coldwell Banker Bain, representing clients like you 24/7, from condos to colonials and everything in between. If you're selling, buying, need a price analysis, or just a contractor referral, ask James, winner of the 2015 through 2019 International Coldwell Banker Diamond Award, with dozens and dozens of 5-star Zillow reviews and Seattle Magazine's 5-star award winner for 2018 through 2020. James Laurie, Coldwell Banker Bain, at 425-466-3672 or jameslaurie.net. Rock solid results.
You're listening to the Podcast Coug.
Two running backs in with the quarterback. Signals called. All man in motion going through to the right side. Hand off. Wings out to the right side. Touchdown, Washington State.
You are listening to the Podcast Coug.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where we're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs. Here we go. It's Utah Saturday, Rice-Eccles Stadium, Salt Lake, 11:30 in the morning, right? 11:30, Pac-12 networks. Washington State's making a trip to Salt Lake for the third year in a row and play its first road game of the season, conference matchup against Utah. It's homecoming for the Utes. I love that Wasatch Mountains in the background. I have not been in that stadium. I have never been there. I'd love to. I'd love to hit it during ski season, but ski season really starts at the end of November, so that's not going to happen. But they have a beautiful stadium, of course, Olympic Stadium as well. And the question is, why 3 years in a row in Salt Lake? I mean, really? 3 years in a row? And that's just crazy. But whatever happened to the trading back and forth locations, back and forth every year? So it's Rice-Eccles Stadium, just east of downtown Salt Lake City. And the Utes are opening as a 14-point favorite. And how they do last week? They bounced back from a 14 points. They were behind 14 points in the fourth quarter with San Diego State, right? And the game went into overtime, scoring a touchdown with 16 seconds remaining. Went into OT. The teams traded scores in the first extra period. They both missed field goals in the second, and then triple overtime. And they went back and forth, and San Diego State converted and won the game. So tough loss for the Utes to lose to San Diego State tough game down in San Diego. Again, we talked about Jaden DeLora, right? We don't know if he's going to start for the Cougs. This is going to be determined right before kickoff or the day before. We really don't know. Remember that we think it's a knee injury. He wanted to play on that the second half of the USC game, but being cautious, the medical staff advised that he just sit out. So we don't know if he's going to start. I'm thinking he's going to be fine. As mentioned on the first half of the podcast, Coug, it was really he wanted to come back on that second half of the game. It's just unclear. Right now we're day to day. Biggest bright spot on the Cougs offense is, of course, DeLora. Unfortunately, we need to see Borghi with 20, 25 touches, and Mcintosh as well getting a lot of touches. Both of them aren't getting enough touches. They're getting like 7, 8, 10, maybe 13. So, the Utes might have bottomed after losing that emotional game. They've lost 2 back-to-back weeks. They've got their own issues too, both on quarterback as well. 2 Saturdays ago, Utah lost to BYU for the first time in 12 years. And San Diego State, that triple overtime. So that momentum might be on our side to bounce back and jump on Utah. We haven't seen a full 4 quarters under Rolo at all. We've seen these meltdowns and just disaster where we have these leads in the second half and just collapse like we talked about on the first segment of this podcast. So the Utes rushing defense is really not good this year. They're allowing 161 yards per game and 9th in the Pac-12. The Cougs have been in the middle, about average, both in passing and running, but our offense is at its best with DeLora. Max Borghi, of course, had some success already, has had success with the Utes, very much so. So we're going to see. He likes playing the Utes. He does really well. But again, 20 touches on Max. There's your min and max, right? Minimum 20 touches, max is 25. Right? There's your min-max. Hopefully, DeLora is playing, and he's he's our playmaker. Both him and Max, we just need to focus on that, and some good coaching as well. So Utah probably has a better defense than Washington State has on offense, especially if the Cougs don't start with DeLora as quarterback. And the Utes aren't announcing who they're going to start as quarterback either. They're looking like it looks like it's going to be this guy from Texas. He's a transfer from Texas, and a Cam Rising. He entered relief and really almost sparked that team last week from a come-from-behind win. It really got things sparked up with the tempo, and he's got a great target, Britton Covey. Covey had 134 yards and on a score and 6 receptions last year against the Cougs. So the Utes returned 9 of 11 starters on defense, which hammered Washington State in the second half of last year's game. And they typically, put out really good defenses in the Pac-12. I mean, they've got one of the best linebackers, in the nation, both Devin Lloyd and Nephi Sewell. Huge on defense. Always have been. Utah, also brings back all 5 offensive linemen, and which helped contribute 223 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns last year against the Cougs. So the Utes are averaging about 5 yards per carry this year, and they have 3 receivers with over 100 yards apiece. And they're tall. They're 6.2. They're great receivers. So the Cougs have had trouble with these long pass catches that, all year long. And I think the Utes are bringing, they've got 19 of 22 starters. So they are pretty solid. Washington State, like I said, we've been blown out 2 consecutive years at Salt Lake. And it may be another long day Saturday. Who knows? That's the thing about college football is when you think something's going to happen, it sometimes just goes the opposite. So who knows? I mean, we could have a great day on Saturday. It won't surprise me if the outcome isn't. It won't surprise me if we only win one more game this year, and that would be Arizona. Okay. Maybe the Beavs, but I doubt it. I think it's going to be Arizona. You just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. Here's something to know about, though, as the Utes are dedicating this season to Ty Jordan, who died in December from an accidental shooting. Ty was a running back from Texas, was named the Pac-12's Conference Newcomer of the Year before the day of his death. And last year as a freshman, he emerged as a star player. Get this, he rushed for almost 600 yards and 6 touchdowns, averages 83 carries in 5 games. So every Ute player is on their helmet. They're wearing a decal with the letters LLTJ. Long live Ty Jordan. So that's just a tragedy. What a sad loss for Ty Jordan and his family. Whittingham is in his 16th year at Utah. He's grandfather of the Pac-12. So Whittingham has, he's like the third longest tenure of all coaches FBS in the United States. He's only had 2 losing seasons. Both went 5-7. Both, though, those years were 2012 and 2013. Whittingham is like I said, he's the third longest active coach in FBS. And, he goes way back. 1994, 2004, he was, in the WAC with Utah, Mountain West with Utah, when Utah was part of the WAC, part of the Mountain West, when they joined the Pac-12. He's got a 76-46 record. He's the highest paid in the Pac-12. He's over $4 million. He's like 4.7 million, and 5-2 in bowl games. But get this: if you take the Mountain West, if you take the WAC and the Mountain West and the Pac-12, Whittingham is 11-3 in bowl games, 11-3 overall. Not bad. Great reputation for being physical, tough, explosive guys, no doubt. This is, and what's interesting, that this is the 6th Washington State-Utah matchup in the last 7 years to be played in Salt Lake City. I mentioned we're 3 years in a row at Salt Lake. How about 6 of the last 7 in Salt Lake? That's crazy. What's going on with the scheduling and not putting Utah into Pullman? That is just crazy. Now, last time Cougs won, 2017, and Herc just gave us a defensive gem. What a great win. 33-25, thanks to Mata Afa. That was 2017. That was our last win down in Salt Lake. I hope to see that stadium sometime. The Wasatch Mountains, beautiful backdrop. Hey, that's it for episode 4 of the 6th season of the Podcast Coug. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe, like that button. And if you haven't already, we've got a new website, thepodcastcoug.com. It's Washington State at Utah on Saturday. God bless and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at PodcastCoug.com.
team.